What's up, y'all? Mayor here. I just want to let you know this episode was such a fun episode to record live in California at Insurance Fest, put on by Insurance Business. I couldn't do this episode without my sponsors, so I had to record this quick intro to tell you about my friends over at Canopy Connect, your one-click solution to getting the deck pages that you need to quote your prospects. And now they have what they call Trailhead, where you can meet your customers where they are and let them work with you on their terms. Make sure if you are a Canopy Connect customer, go to your link flow settings to enable the sharing path page. And then if you're not a Canopy Connect customer, make sure you check them out. Use canopy.com/Heath. Also, my good friends over at One Fort. I couldn't do this show without all my good friends over there. It's AI for insurance agencies. Save time, win more commercial P&C by automating submissions, quoting, and binding with AI. One Fort makes your life smarter, faster, and easier by automating workflows, reducing costs, and boosting efficiency. Offload manual work and focus on growing your book. They've already saved insurance agencies over 100,000 hours. Unbelievable. Guys, also my newest sponsor, and I'm so excited to have them on board. I've already heard raving reviews from my good friends over at Viva. If you've even thought about offshore talent, if you've even thought about outsourcing capacity, go check out Viva at vivavs.com. They're insurance trained VAs. They could be licensed. They are bilingual. Guys, they are managed capacity services that work in a different way. They've been doing this for a long time, and they've got it figured out. Reclaim 20 plus hours a week by offloading quoting, policy servicing, and carrier management. Every process is recorded and documented to your agency success playbook. Go check it out, vivavs.com. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy this episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the Mayor, Heath Sharon, and the host of this podcast, and I'm pumped. Literally, there's people here hanging out with me. I usually say that virtually, but I get to say that here live in person with people, and so I'm really excited to have an audience of people watching us do a podcast. So this is kind of a historical thing for me. I don't get to do this often. So, Christina, I'm so glad you're here, and audience, I'm glad that you guys are here hanging out because we got some really fun stuff to talk about. I don't have a typical, your typical insurance guest here. You come from a wholly different world, but come from our world, though. So I'm excited to talk to you about that and dig in a little bit deeper into what that is. And so I will cut in my sponsors later. But for this, I just want to dive into it head first. So why don't you do this for me, Christina? Why don't you let's take a walk down memory lane, and why don't you tell me a little bit about you, and maybe not all the way back to birth, to our point earlier, and that might be weird, but let's at least get into how you got to where you are today in the insurance journey you've been on.
Thank you. No, it's so great to be here kind of live and in person. So this is a really exciting moment. So nice to meet you, Mayor, in person.
For sure.
So interesting for me, for insurance, similar kind of to what other people have said, I hadn't planned on being on insurance, but right before I joined AIG several years ago, I was in consulting, and I felt like with consulting,
Pull your mic up a little.
I felt like with consulting, I didn't really own the outcome, and I really couldn't help people through a journey or through a process and kind of stand with them in that moment of need. You're kind of doing stuff behind the scenes and then handing it off. And I wanted to have that accountability and be on the line. And so when the opportunity came to join a claims team at an insurance company, I was a little bit intrigued about it. And so I joined claims. They figured I was a smart kid. I had never worked in claims, or they could teach it to me. But I guess I had kind of the foundational kind of people skills and empathy and analytics and so forth to do it. So that's how I entered the insurance industry. And then it really just opened up so many doors for me. I really had a magical career when I was there. I started off in Miami in the Latin America group. I moved to Tokyo. I ran claims operations for Asia, and I'd never even been to Japan before. So to be able to kind of sit in those seats. I then moved to Europe, and I ran the shared services from Bulgaria, which is like a place I also had never thought I would have gone. But I think what's really made my insurance career so fulfilling is that, similar to this event here, you end up meeting so many amazing people, and insurance is such a tight-knit community that you're always like 2 degrees of separation from somebody in the insurance industry. And so I just have really enjoyed really not just kind of the work relationships, but many of my work relationships are now my best friends. Um, so I was at insurance, at a carrier for a while, and then I decided I wanted to do a little bit something different. Like kind of my point of view was only from that carrier's lens. So I ended up leaving, and I became president of a private equity-backed engineering company that's in the major loss kind of claim space, forensic engineering. So that allowed me to see how different carriers kind of approach the same problem. And I found that really fascinating because I thought there was only one way to do it. And there's actually various different ways kind of based on the company culture and et cetera. So I led that company for a couple of years, and while I was there, it started to expose me of new ways of using technology across the claims ecosystem and then kind of across kind of broader risk management. And so I said, after I had this exit, it'd be really great to move over to kind of the technology forward space. And so I moved over to a company called Guidewire, which is kind of the core system of record for majority P&C companies. I was kind of the insurance person in the room because most people at that company are on the tech side. And then I was there for about 6 months, and Google had reached out. I was like, Google, like, what does Google do in insurance? Like, why would I want to be at Google? That's just this big behemoth. And I remember talking to my husband about it, and he was like, you don't want to go to Google. It's like this big behemoth. Guidewire is a great place to go. You're in insurance. And I was a little bit intrigued when I started talking to the Googlers about kind of all the different technologies coming up, the ways that they're interacting with the market. And I thought, you know what, I'll never regret going, to Google. And so I was at Guidewire for about a year and then came over to Google, and I've been at Google for a year now.
So, what did Mama think about that, or what did family think when you went from safety net there and like now you're at Google, and like you don't think Google, you think insurance, you think data, you think Google search, whatnot.
Yeah.
But what was that? What did family think? What did Mama think when you went there?
Well, frankly, my mama still really doesn't know what I do.
Yeah.
But in general, like I can say my friends, right? A lot of my friends are like, "You're going to Google? Is Google going to sell insurance?" And it's like, no, Google is not selling insurance. But if you really, and it was a learning for me as well, if you really think about the whole, not just Google, but the whole Alphabet ecosystem, there's so many different ways that kind of the Google ecosystem kind of interacts with insurers, kind of unofficially or not. So I'll use kind of unofficially. A ton of insurers use Google Maps unofficially without commercial license as they're doing commercial property underwriting, right? They want to zoom in on the roof of a building, and they're kind of leveraging it that way. That's the unlicensed use, but a lot of people use it that way. But if you kind of think about the data sets that Google has, the geospatial data sets, kind of the other capabilities that are there, there's so many ways that those product sets are being used and can do good for the insurance industry. And so how do we help insurance companies navigate, that alphabet set of companies to be able to have access to those tools and resources?
And so where you're at Google now, and you're at Google Cloud, not necessarily Google, but if you're at because you're from the South, so if you're at a backyard barbecue, you're chilling with your friends, having a beer, whatever it might be, if someone asks you what you do for a living, how do you say that people checking out or glazing over?
I still say I work in insurance because I do still work in insurance. And oftentimes saying you work in insurance, it glazes people over just with that statement as well. But I really couch it in the way that I feel like I'm really helping insurance companies, right, and communities and people and businesses in general get access to insurance, right? So what are the tools, the capabilities that makes insurance more available to a broader population? What makes insurance more affordable and accessible? And so I feel like at Google, with the set of data and analytics and capabilities that we have, we can help insurers make insurance available and more affordable for people, and then also for agents and brokers, right, to be able to have the tool set as well, to be able to understand their customers' needs much more quickly and help them understand the emerging risks that they're faced.
Yeah, and as you were telling me your story, I'm sure other people heard this, you've lived in a lot of other countries, you've worked in insurance in other countries. That to me fascinates me because it's my show, so I can say that. My dumb ass thought that everything in insurance was the same. Every country did things the same, and it's not. Other countries do things differently, and I've learned that from my friends at London, and I've learned some other things like that. So tell me something, that we in the U.S. insurance economy that we could learn from other countries, and then vice versa.
Yeah, it is really fascinating. I was a big kind of history buff as well. So kind of how insurance is used in different countries is kind of rooted in very historical roots or demographic roots. The U.S. market, outside of London, is the most mature insurance market. We have a lot of sophisticated products that are out there, but we have a traditional distribution channel to be able to access that. Usually accessing it through an agent or a broker. In some cases, you're able to do it online if you think about some of the personal lines, but it's a traditional distribution model. When we get to, I'll use an example, some of the emerging markets, like when I'm in Hong Kong, Singapore, or even in South Africa, it's a very different distribution model. You have a much younger population of people, very digitally native people. It's a less regulated market as well, and they're also just unfamiliar with insurance products in general. So insurers are much more, I think, creative and agile about creating micro insurance policies about things that young people value. And so oftentimes when we're talking with carriers from the more mature markets, there is, if you think about life insurance, young people don't think they're going to die, as an example, so they're not buying it. And then for some more sophisticated business policies, people don't think that they're going to get exposed to a risk. They're kind of thinking like, oh, I'm doing these things, and so I'm protected. And so I think insurers are much more creative about creating the need and the demand, and then they're able to price that product accordingly to make it accessible for people to buy. And so there's some creative ways from a distribution perspective that I see in other markets that I think U.S. insurers can learn from. But we, of course, have a much more sophisticated, kind of rich, insurance market and offerings.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is in the U.S. we have too much legacy that we think of and too much the way things have always been done for us to have innovation like that. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
It is. It's oftentimes, one of the biggest challenges for insurers, and even for kind of the large brokerages as well, is there's a lot of legacy tech debt right now. People often say like insurance isn't innovative, and they say we as an industry were innovative 50 years ago. A lot of the mainframes are sitting in closets with insurance companies. And so how the challenge right now is how to get kind of the data out of those systems and be able to have access to that to get the insights from it. So that's the big challenge now, and that's kind of the big albatross that's sitting around the CEO's neck of how do I get data out of these systems so I can get these insights? Because really the data is the most valuable asset there. So there's different ways to be able to get that data out now to make it a much more agile asset to deploy, so you can kind of bring more value to your customers or get more lifetime customer value out of the data that you have on them. So that's kind of the big opportunity, whereas in emerging markets that are digitally native, they didn't have that challenge. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've heard a lot in our industry over the last 5, 10, 15 years is this whole buzzword, so to speak, of data and how important data is. And I still think as an industry that we overlook how much data we have at our fingertips, whether you're an agency owner, whether you're a carrier, or a tech vendor like Vertafore out there. We have so much data at our fingertips. Why is it that you think that we overlook that, and how should we as an industry do a better job of harnessing that, using that to our advantage to help the consumer, the end user?
If anyone's in an M&A deal, the data is the most valuable asset that you have, right? You're buying a book of business. The book of business is really data on people. And so I think, we're talking about kind of overlooking that as an asset. That's really what makes your business very unique. And so what's been really interesting for me at Google is if we look at some of the areas where we're more known in, it's in that consumer retail area, right? You have these me experiences. We've all been to kind of a website where it's kind of this static chat bot where it knows nothing about you, and it's just very frustrating. And we've also been on websites where it's like, welcome back, Keith. And it's like, would you like to buy that again? And would you like to buy this as well? And so with the technology that's out there now, you're able to have that what's the next best action in real time. when you're having a conversation with a customer. And so that ability to have that information on your current customer to be able to know what's the next best action. But then as you do an acquisition and you're buying a book of business, what does good look like, and what are the buying habits of people with these, qualifications or classifications, so you can, apply that to this other book of business and get that value out of it, right? So the data piece is absolutely key, and for all industries, I think that's one of the most important things.
Well, I think one of the things, and when you have the AMS, the CRM, and you have the notes section in there, I think there's a lot of value people overlook, and even the smallest detail of little Johnny's soccer game, or Sally's, ballet recital, or keeping up with grandma's birthday date, or their own like little things like that provide a data set that is so valuable, because people want that human interaction. They still want the relationship side of that. And so working at such a data center like, Google and whatnot, are you still seeing that? Am I still right in that, or am I telling people the wrong thing every single week on my podcast?
No, absolutely. I mean, when I look at some of the CRMs, kind of the customer experience, the contact center experience, right now it's focused on how do you capture all of that unstructured data. So you're looking at how are you capturing the best qualities of your best salesperson, and your best salesperson is jotting down a note on a calendar, on a sticky, or on a folder that Johnny's soccer match, or Johnny graduates from high school next year. And so how are you able to capture that and use those as prompts for you to have deeper one-on-one relationships is front and center when we kind of look at what does insurance look like. It really is a hyper-personalized experience, and we're leveraging AI and technology to make stronger relationships than we have ever had in the past.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so throughout your career, you've brought up several large companies you've worked for. You've brought up some countries you've lived in. My question, again, me, being nosy as a host, I would love to know, like, what are some of those leadership things that you've learned? What are some of the things, and I don't want to play it from a female in leadership, because you're much more than that. But, as a human being in leadership in other countries, large organizations, what are some of those leadership principles or some of the things you've learned from across your incredible career?
Oh gosh, I've probably made more mistakes than I'd want to remember. But so I'll talk, and a lot of people talk about kind of the good things. I can talk about kind of my frustrations and things where I was like, gosh, I wish I had done that differently. And I think even for me as a person, we're all kind of growing and learning new things as we go along. And I think many of you, if you've kind of been in your career for a long time, kind of like what's the next mountain to climb, or what's the next new challenge, and being able to constantly challenge yourself and not being comfortable. And I realized maybe a couple of years ago that I was becoming like the master of the status quo, and that I could do my job well. It was great getting accolades from it, but I wanted to do something different. And I've kind of can say my career's been in a couple of different ways where I've decided maybe it's time to do something different, so I'm not so comfortable. And then I can say, joining Google last year, like, I am an insurance person. I'm not a tech person. Like, I didn't know how to build an agent. Like, all this stuff is new for me too. So when I'm meeting with customers, or they're talking about kind of the challenge and the change management, I went through my own challenge and change management, because I walked into a company of 100,000 engineers. All of them speak a different language. All of them are throwing acronyms. All of them know how to code. I knew nothing of this. I grew up in Microsoft Office using PowerPoint and Excel, and I moved to Google Workspace. I was pulling my hair out. I remember one night I was trying to prepare a customer presentation. People were like, well, just use AI to make slides. And I'm like, I don't know how to use Google Workspace. I was crying, and then I was angry at my husband for no reason. And so
Get it. We've all been there. We've all been
there. But I realized it was my own kind of discomfort, and I was so frustrated. And then I realized I can't replicate the same process of the past. Like, I need to think about what's the outcome I'm trying to achieve, and then rewire my brain for that outcome. And that's, that was a micro lesson learned. And then it's, kind of a macro lesson learned around that. Like, I can't go from one company to another, or one role from the other, or one country from the other, and expect to kind of behave the exact same way. I need to look at the signals around me and then rewire the way that I work.
Well, yeah, and it's hard for all of us as an industry to get comfortable in the uncomfortable and trying to figure that out because we have lived in an industry where things have always been done this way, and it's easy for us to get complacent in that and to get comfortable in that. So I appreciate you sharing from that. And so, since we do have insurance agents here or insurance people here, lean into that a little bit more for me on that and tell me, whether it's developing a niche or whether it's, getting uncomfortable with AI, trying to learn more of that or whatever it might be. What's something that you could tell the audience or people listening, the thousands listening that aren't here, of what should we be getting more comfortable in the uncomfortable with in the insurance space?
In the insurance space or with AI? I mean, I can say
Any of the above. Any of the above.
So I think, really from an insurance standpoint, it's actually fascinating for me. As I said earlier, I think AI is going to allow agents, brokers to lean in more in the personal side of it. So I think embracing that, but leveraging AI to be able to do it. Because I've talked to some agents and brokers who are like, I'm not using AI for my business. I'm doing things traditional way. But why wouldn't you use an additional lever or tool for you to help connect with your customer, to understand the risk, to be a true advisor for them in so many ways, and to really turbocharge the relationship? I was, meeting with some brokers a couple of months ago, and I was showing them kind of a simple hack that I use with a tool called notebook.LM to kind of just get insights to help them kind of prep for meetings. And it's a free tool. You can download it from Google. And one of the brokers that night, he said he downloaded it, he used it, and he said, what would have taken me 5 hours to prepare for a customer meeting took me like 15 minutes. And so those productivity hacks, it's not taking anything away from the business, but it's helping you to just be a better partner, for your customers. Why wouldn't you embrace those instead of just saying, I'm not going to use AI? Because there's a lot of benefits that I see to create capacity to really to do more.
And then, is there anything to just the insurance industry in general that people should lean into more?
So I would say, to that point, I do think AI will allow agents and brokers to be better risk advisors. And so how are you changing the business and looking at not just kind of the indemnification, so not after the event of a loss, but how can you really be a partner for all these different phases for your customers? And so it's interesting, kind of going back to that Lloyd's event last week when we had Lloyd's Lab. It was really where we saw these new insurance products that were helping along the full life cycle. From the helping them prepare from the design phase, even early on in the process of a new construction project, a solar farm is being built, being partners with them in a resilient design at that phase, helping them to insure along the way, implementing Internet of Things to have sensors to understand the health of that asset throughout its life, and then helping them to remediate if there was, a hailstorm or some other event that damaged that so they can get back online very quickly. So it was truly, if you think about the revenue that's unlocked from that full relationship versus just collecting a premium at one point in time and then hoping they renew a year later, I think just the growth opportunity from looking at broader advisory services is, without a limit.
Yeah, and it's showing a great intersection of that human with the data and with the technology side of that. So I appreciate that. When insurance people think about, whether it's AI, cloud, digital transformation, those types of terms, they immediately think about security and data privacy. What are the biggest misconceptions you hear from like cloud security, and how does Google Cloud approach protecting some of the industry's most sensitive data?
So it's interesting. I think people often forget that Google Cloud is, an enterprise version of a product that's available for consumers. So yesterday we had a customer, an insurance company at our office, and typically they'll go visit Anthropic, and they'll go to OpenAI, and then they'll come visit us. And the CEO says, Google, I never hear about Google in the AI space. And I said, really? Like, have you ever used Google Maps before? Have you ever used YouTube or Google Search? Over 15 years ago, that search bar, when you type in WO and it comes up as World Cup, because it's knowing that those predictive analytics, that was all Google, right? I mean, we're the ones who really created AI, but it's being implemented or really embedded in all of these consumer products, and now we're making it available for customers. So Google Cloud was
And it's free.
and it's free. And I mean, for all of those products, we kind of think about the scale of it as well. I asked folks this: have you ever been to Google.com and it didn't come up? Have you ever been to Google Maps and it didn't come up? Is it latent? Is there slowness? Is there latency to it? And it's free. And so people Google Cloud was created for that first, for us to support YouTube, Google Maps, Google Search, Google Ads, Gmail, like all of these different products, and we're making it available. So when I kind of connect Google Cloud is not just a product that's being sold on its own, but that we're actually using it. We consider ourselves customer zero. We actually built it for ourselves and making it available. Then that kind of clicks with people. So when you think about security as well, and I hadn't thought about this, I met one of our engineers who's over Google Search, and he said when we go live with Google Search, with any changes in the code, it has to be compliant in every single country in the world the moment it goes live, from a data privacy, from every single regulatory perspective, and every single market. There's no other company that has a scale that from the moment it goes live, it has to work everywhere and comply with DORA, GDPR, like every single legislation. So it's already built into the products that we're serving the communities already. It's not something that we're kind of building on the side as an afterthought.
Yeah, again, going back to that Google, you guys are the most famous brand in the world, and for people to say, like, I don't think of Google when it comes, like, to me, it's interesting to hear you say that, and to hear the integration of AI so far back in like that search you mentioned.
It's seamless, right?
Yeah.
It's seamless. You don't even think about it. It's actually, we had a thing, I think Google search hit, I forgot, maybe 10 years or so, when they had image search. Because remember, you could only do text search. And then they said, there's always these cool questions that the engineers ask, like, what if? So you guys probably remember when J-Lo wore that Versace, that green Versace dress.
I was just about to bring that up. That started Google Picture, or the
That
Google
was
Images.
the inspiration.
That's crazy. Do y'all remember that? Dude, I do. My wife loved that picture.
Everybody wanted to find, they were like the Google dress, the green dress that J-Lo was wearing, right? And so they realized that people want to be able to search images too. And so they're like, well, how do we solve this? And that was kind of the inspiration from it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I remember that.
Everybody remembers.
Yeah, and like the next day, all of a sudden, we have Google Images now. And so, very cool. So talk to me, just for a second, as a follow-up to the customer zero thing. Tell me a little bit more about what, like, if someone hears customer zero, what does that mean to you guys as Google and as big as you guys are? What does that Google customer zero mean?
So customer zero means that everything that we produce, we use ourselves first. So it's used internally for us. It's not for a commercial purpose to start off. So for me, there's a term which was new because I'm not a tech person. You guys might know dog fooding. Like you eat your own dog food. And so we have dog fooding stuff every day that comes out. And it's across new capabilities that might be coming out on Maps or YouTube, et cetera. And we have 180,000 employees around the world. So we've got a kind of a good test group of people to test that, or to test new products, that are coming out, Fitbit Air, or, Pixels or so forth. So we leverage ourselves to test, and we kind of crowdsource really the pressure testing of all these different capabilities to make sure that it works before we release it. So that's how we call ourselves Customer Zero. And it's actually been... I mostly talk with kind of the underwriting or claims teams or distribution teams, but we've actually had some really great customer conversations because our customers want to know also, like, what does Google's CFO do? Like, how are they using AI? What does Google's legal team use AI for? And so we also make those introductions, and they share how they're using AI. And our CFO's office, they're not tech savvy either, but they're figuring out how to build agents for cash management or some FP&A operations, and they're happy to share that with customers as well. Right?
Love it. Okay, so the last thing I want to get into in the last couple of minutes or 10 minutes or so is, you recently, I found this out after the fact, but you co-authored a book. And it was something that I feel like has led you, I feel like your whole career has led you up to this book. And maybe I'm wrong, but co-authoring this book of like artificial intelligence in the insurance space. And you talked about underwriting, and you talked about brokerage and customer experience, and you got into organizational, a lot of different things there. After researching and writing this book, what surprised you the most about where AI is already, as you mentioned with Google, where it's already creating value in the insurance industry? We'll start there.
So it was interesting for me. There was a group of, it's actually a book that's published in Europe. And so there's a couple of people from insurers. There's like 6 chapters, kind of the ancient history of insurance, And then I have the last chapter, which is kind of the future of insurance. And so pulling together kind of the history and where we are today, there's a focus on data and AI and analytics right now. But one of the areas I'm really fascinated with right now, which Google is kind of leading the way in, is one, kind of the physical AI and robotics and how that's going to be integrated into insurance going forward, right? Whether that's from disaster recovery or other areas. And then the second is really like quantum computing, right? And quantum physics. And if you think about insurance now, it's very risk-based, it's probabilistic, it's underwriting intuition, right? And claims experience. And if you kind of think about the future with our ability to do better predictive modeling and very precise predictive modeling at a low cost point, with quantum computing, you can really replicate a risk, right? Really model it, leveraging sensors and Internet of Things and kind of these other kind of a 3D model of that asset, and be able to understand what's going to happen to it, and then price that risk even up to a few minutes before that risk occurs, right? You know it's going to happen. You know that the hurricane is going to hit at this exact location. Can you issue a policy 5 minutes before, right? Instead of like locking down the doors 10 days before like we do now. So just imagine all the opportunities for additional new products and services that are priced accordingly, right? But because you have a much more tighter understanding of that risk exposure because of your ability to leverage really physics to model the risk and the impact.
Yeah, but for me, I'm starting to pee my pants a little thinking about that, just because it's scary when you think about robotics and quantum, whatever the word was, all these things. There's insurance agents, people listening, like, might be a little scared of that. Think, oh crap, is there already this fear factor of we're going to be replaced and AI is going to take over, and there's people that are, scared of that a little bit. But how could you tell us, we shouldn't be, or why we should lean more into this and not be scared of it? Because again, it is happening, whether we like it or not. But how do you keep me from peeing in my pants?
I don't want that to happen. No, but I say, okay, I'm here at Google right now. So
Yeah.
even for Google, they encourage us to meet with people. So we're not a remote company. So sometimes when I meet people and they're like, oh, we're fully remote, I don't need to go to the office, I could just do my job, I don't have to meet anybody in person. Like, that's not the culture of a company that I'm with at all, right? Google, if you've ever been to a Google office, we have the most amazing food and benefits and massages and all of that. They expect us to be in the office. They expect us to eat lunch in a cafeteria, not eat at our desk. They expect us to be out and meet people in person. So even for us, the architecture, our culture, and everything is focused around innovation through collaboration. And it's a culture that really says you can't be an innovator as a single threaded source. You need to be connecting to other people. So that being said, it's how are you connecting with different tools to allow you to have greater velocity in that innovation? How can you and I talk more and get a really great idea together that we can build together? And then we may not be engineers, but we're able to execute on that idea because there's a toolkit of things for us to be able to use to be able to do so. So I think it's not kind of running and hiding from it, but really understanding the capabilities that are there. And I argue probably people who are using AI don't see it as a threat anymore. They're seeing all these different ways they can leverage it to do more. And if you think about the companies from a valuation perspective, those companies that are in hyper growth mode, it's companies that are able to get more revenue per person And they're able to get more revenue per person because they have an uplift in technology to be able to do that.
So again, leaning into using technology and AI to enhance your folks, not replace them.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, so since I do have a live audience, I never get to do this. Does anybody have questions that they would want to ask of Christina? I never get to do this because I'm normally in a studio with no windows in Arkansas. But I'm trying to get a mic up here, but if you want to, hang on, you got one coming? Okay. I think we got one coming. We got a question up here. Altus? Anise, my bad. I can't read. I'm from Arkansas.
I'm from Kentucky, though, so
I don't know what's worse. I think
there's a
Arkansas is
debate
way
about
worse.
which state's the lowest in the educational platform.
We say thank God for Kentucky. I'm just kidding.
No worries at all. Thank you so much, Anise Taylor with Snap Refund. Christina, thank you so much for sharing your story. As you talk about how to get ahead in the insurance industry, I feel for someone working at Google, having that name and the halo effect of Google makes it really easy to get ahead. What advice do you have for the startup founders that are trying to make a name and actually trying to make an imprint to maybe one day be like a Google, to maybe not get ahead in the insurance industry, but get recognized in the insurance industry that can lead us to that next step?
How long have you been sitting on that question? Because that was really good.
Oh, yeah. Since I've been listening.
Okay,
Really?
that was really good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So Google recruited me, right? So it's not that I grew up in Google, but great question, Anise. So I'd say actually I can take a step back too with my career path as well, because when I left the carrier side and decided to go kind of out into the wild world of kind of the insurance ecosystem, I realized I was well known within my company, but I didn't actually have my own. I didn't really own my own name and have my own brand and have my own identity outside of that. So for me, and I know exactly what you're doing as well, is how do you get the name for yourself so people recognize you as a thought leader in the industry versus somebody who works at company X, right? And you're an independent person that people know you as your own brand, right? Kind of separate from your company. Of course, with a startup company, it's even harder to get that credibility, but it's kind of constantly always meeting, greeting, kind of being out there, kind of all the things that, really all of us are doing in the room. But I think for me, one of those pivot points in my mind was, and probably for, agencies as well, is how do I become the master of my own fate? And what are the different avenues or channels that I can pursue to create my own independent identity so people recognize kind of Christina as my own brand versus Christina at AIG or Christina at Google, because I'm at Google now, which is great, but we've known each other before that. So that's kind of how do you really create your own identity so that people know who you are and kind of respect that, what you bring from a relationship standpoint, not just from a sales standpoint.
Yeah, I love that answer. Anybody else have any questions? We got 4 or 5 minutes before they cut me off. 0, 5, 4, 3. All right. Well, again, thank you guys. Thank you for being here and hanging out with me in Insurance Town. Thank you guys for being here. And I got to pick up Insurance Town and bring it to California, so that was fun for me. So thank you all for being here. Thank you. And I will see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.